How are we doing for time?
We're good. Yeah, it's 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I know some of you were in the presentation last time, but just to let you know, this is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your video and your phone. And then it's my pleasure to introduce one of my teachers and mentors, Michael Lee. He's the founder of Phoenix Rising School of Yoga. He's a master educator, yoga therapist, speaker, author. I would say one of the original yogis from Kripalu, if that's a simple way to describe it. He was there back in the 80s. And this presentation he's offering today, the 8 themes of transformation, is what I would consider like the culmination of this rich body of work that he has had over the last 30 plus years with yoga, meditation, Buddhism, neuroscience, psychology. Personally, it has totally transformed my life. And so I'm just so honored that you have offered your time to present this work to us. And so what I'll do is I will go ahead and make you a co-host, and you can share your screen.
Okay, thank you, Shae, and
Thanks
thank you for that wonderful welcome. That was one of the original yogis. I like that. Yeah, I don't know that I go quite back that far, but
but he knows people like Bessel van der Kolk, and the books that I've read, he knows all of those people.
I do, yes. I must admit, I know quite a few of the people in our world. Yeah, that's an interesting thing about the history of yoga in America. I did give a presentation back, I think it was in about 2016, on the history of yoga therapy in America. And it was fascinating because I had to do a little research for it. So I got to interview a lot of my old buddies from way back, people like Lilias Folan that probably many of the younger yogis haven't even heard of, but Lilias was I'd call her the grandmother of yoga in America, because she was on a PBS television show, Yoga and You, that was aired for many years, and she was instrumental in bringing a lot of great stuff to the world, and did it without underselling yoga at all too, which was pretty amazing. So yeah, we've come a long way, haven't we, really, since back in those early days in the 80s and 70s. And it's great to still be part of it now. And one of the things that has really happened for me, which I'm really pleased and excited about at the same time, and contented about, has been a deepening. I think the longer I've been doing this work, the more I've learned about it, and the more I've learned about myself in the process, because you can't really, I believe, and I tell most of my students, you can't really do transformational work unless you're into transformation yourself. And it's certainly been, once I kind of had my initial awakening experience, it was kind of like you're on the ride now and you can't get off. There's no turning back once you get onto that train of basically taking your life as an opportunity to liberate yourself. Really, that's really what it's about. And it's easy to kind of talk about liberation and freeing yourself from suffering, and living a life that has a lot more love and compassion in it, and a lot less fear, hatred, and delusion, greed, those kinds of things.
Well, I know we were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, if you could describe Phoenix Rising in one sentence, and you said, make peace with yourself so you can make peace with the world. And I was like, it's so simple.
Yeah, and help others make peace with themselves too.
Yeah.
And
you kind of have to make peace with yourself before you can offer that to somebody else. So.
I think so. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And the more I make peace with myself, the better I'm able to support and help others. And it's not kind of like a done deal. Like, I don't think there's any kind of end game here. While we're alive and in this body, transformation is going to continue to happen. We will continue to deepen. If we take the lessons that life gives us, that's the whole question there. It's like, are we willing to be up for life? I was very inspired by the inauguration today. I think it's the first time I've really heard, coming from the political arena in any shape or form, words that really are very much steeped in in the transformation of human beings, like our need to kind of shift ourselves in order even to create a nation, the kind of nation we want. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So that was kind of inspiring. But yeah, for me personally, been engaged in this for quite a number of years. And so I think what I'd like to do is sort of have a crack at talking about what is transformation, and then what I'll do is talk about the 8 themes that we use in the Phoenix Rising method. But feel free to there's those of you on Zoom here. Feel free to raise your hand or stop or ask a question. And I know Shae is looking at the chat on Facebook Live. So any folks listening in on Facebook Live, if you'd like to type into the chat something that, or into your message that something you'd like to ask, I'd be more than happy to attempt to respond to it. And if I can't answer your question, I'll tell you that too. So either way. So yeah, transformation or liberation is another way to put it. And just to give you a little background to it, we're all born perfectly, in a sense. We're born perfectly imperfect in a way. But then, the school of life, we're born into the school of life. And sometimes it's a great school right from the outset where but all of us who are parents, and I'm one, I've had 5 children from 2 marriages, and I have a great family, and I'm very connected and close to my parents. And if I look at myself over the years, I'd say I've probably done a reasonable job at being a father, but I certainly haven't done a perfect job. And in my younger days as a parent, I was not the perfect parent, right? Nowhere near perfect parent. In fact, if I look back now and want to really beat myself up, I could. I choose not to do that because it doesn't help anything. I just have to settle for the fact that I did the best I could with what I knew then, and the transformation and the extent to which I'd worked on myself and engaged my own personal growth. I did the best I could with what I had. My intentions were good. But did I do the perfect job? No way. Did I hurt my kids in ways that I could have avoided? Yes, I did. Did I make unwise choices sometimes around my parenting? Yes, I did. So I think all of us as parents, we're all in that same boat. And so that's the world that a new child is born into an imperfect world with imperfect parents. And of course, in the formative years, a lot of that is going to play out in their life. And the amazing thing is they will find a way to adapt to that. They will find a way to deal with that. Now, some of the responses in dealing with that may be skillful and helpful, but some of the responses in dealing with that, because of the emotional hurt, pain, and suffering that it is inflicted, maybe not skillful, maybe not wise, maybe things that are further destructive, either to self or to others. And that's just one of the realities of life. In fact, for the Buddha, there is suffering, and that's one of the causes of suffering, if you like, in a sense, is the reality of being born into an imperfect world and having to adapt and change and grow and learn and deal with that, sometimes skillfully, sometimes not. And that's also a great source of compassion too, because compassion to self and others, if you realize that that's also you and me, we were all born imperfectly. And so we've all spent our life learning, growing, changing, and adapting, sometimes skillfully, sometimes not. And also compassion for other fellow human beings who've also had to endure that journey in life. And so there we are. Now, the first Yoga Sutra, Patanjali says, now the discipline of yoga. That's all it says, now the discipline of yoga. And I often wondered what he meant by that. And there are many different interpretations. You can read all kinds of different interpretations of the Yoga Sutras, because they do need interpretation, because they're just these beautiful little one-liners, but my thing with now the discipline of yoga means that there may come a time in your life, not necessarily, but there may come a time in your life where you say, yeah, I'm up for learning more about this. I'm up for embracing the path of change, the path of transformation. I'm up for exploring what it would take to become a better person, to become a wiser person, to become a more loving person, to become a more compassionate human being. And I'm up for learning how to do that. And I'm willing to take my own life into account as the vehicle for that. And that's a wonderful thing to do if you ever reach that turning point in your life. And I think most of us in the yoga world and the meditation world and, you know, the personal growth world and the therapy world, many of us have got to that place where we've said, you know, we really need to up our game, you know, and we can do that. We can do that if we follow some basic ground rules, I guess. It doesn't mean to say there's a recipe for this thing called transformation. There's not. There's no, like, this is how you do it from A to Z. Even the Buddha, when he talked about the Four Noble Truths, he said there is suffering. There is a cause of suffering, and it's got a lot to do with those maladaptive responses like greed, hatred, and delusion. So when we get into greed, we get into hating other people, or we get deluded thinking the world's a particular way when it's actually not. Then we're going to make responses to the world that aren't going to be skillful, wise, or mindful. And we're probably going to hurt ourselves and others by making noises. So that's the cause of suffering. All right. But just like there's a cause of suffering, he said we can also liberate ourselves from suffering. And what the Buddha gave us was the Eightfold Path, which is a great, it wasn't a formula, it wasn't a recipe, wasn't a set of directions. It was just saying, here are some guiding principles. Here are some wise things you might consider as a way of going up this mountain of transformation, of liberation, path of liberation. And basically, they were things like wise speech. Like every time I speak, my speech, whatever I'm talking, it has an impact. In a way, it's like everything I say or do, I'm creating my own future, right? Because whatever I say or do, I now have to live with the result of that. I now have to live into that world that I've created through whatever I've said and done. So being mindful and wise about what I choose to say and do might be a good idea if I want to be free, if I want to free myself from suffering. Right? But the Buddha can't, or anyone else, any other teacher can't tell you how to do that. We all have to walk our own path. We all have to know ourselves and know how we're going to go about that. And it's can be a lonely path at times because no one else has got the exact same path that we have. We have our own rocks and roots and stumps and holes to fall into that are different from anyone else's. We have our own strength, stamina, and resilience at different times in our life, often driven by circumstances. Yeah. But how do we then handle those circumstances? Are we up for the challenge? Can we engage a state of equanimity regardless of the circumstances? And there's been some amazing human beings who've been able to do that. Who've actually under a lot of duress. Viktor Frankl, for example, if you've ever read any of his work, horrendous suffering as a prisoner of war, horrendous treatment, degradation, beatings, near-death experiences, terrible stuff. And he managed to find the resilience to overcome that simply by saying, regardless of what happens to me, as long as I've got breath in my body, as long as I've got consciousness, I can choose how to be with whatever is coming my way. I can choose how to be with it. If they're beating me, I can choose how to be with that beating. Yeah, that's phenomenal stuff. I can't do that. But, you know, it's possible. It's possible. So in any given moment, we have a choice. We have a choice of how to be with the experience. Right? And in a way, that's, I guess, what the Buddha and the yogis have been teaching for thousands of years. And how do we get ourselves into that kind of a game? How do we prepare ourselves? How do we learn how to do that? Because that's really what's being called for if we're going to embrace this transformational journey. So let's talk about what is transformation. I'll bring a few slides up here and share it with you. Just one moment. All right, so the process of transformation in the Phoenix Rising method First of all, a little bit about yoga. It's a scientific system of self-investigation, self-transformation, self-realization that originated in India. Um, Transformation is, this is a guy called Robert Gass. He studied transformation. He says it's profound, it's fundamental, and it's irreversible. It's a metamorphosis. And metamorphosis is a great word because that's the one that's used with a butterfly turning into the caterpillar, or vice versa. I can't remember which way it goes. Is it the caterpillar into the butterfly? So it's a radical change from one way of being to another. And in a sense, transformation in our human beingness, it's different from change. Transformation and change are not the same thing. We can change, like there's that old saying about, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, you can change things around, but if the ship's still going on the same track, it's still going to hit the iceberg, right? So that's change. But transformation is like really turning the ship in another direction. It's a significant shift and a significant change. And here, I believe that the body is a great source of awareness that fuels transformation. Basically, before we can transform, we have to be aware of what's going on. We need to know where we are at and what's going down if we're going to change it or shift it. But the body is an amazing source of wisdom for that, because the body doesn't lie. The body is a very, very true instrument and will give us immediate feedback as to our state of being or as to what's happening in and around us, if we can tune in and listen to it. Now, once a shift happens in the body, once that shift has started to happen, then it's game on. Once an awareness comes through the body, it's already started a shift. It's not just a thought or a feeling, it's an embodied experience of a different way of being. And that is transformation. And that's in effect what the whole Phoenix Rising approach to yoga therapy is based on. It's based on this very principle that I'm showing you here. Now, to give you a different example of that in another context, in 1971, I think it was, when Edgar Mitchell was on his way back from the moon, he was the 6th person to walk on the moon. On his way back from the moon, and he's looking out the window of the shuttle that's bringing him back, the spacecraft, and his work's done, so he doesn't have much to do, and he's seeing the earth, the sun, the sky, the moon, and everything are all around him, and he's feeling his body in its weightless condition, and he has this sense, visceral. He described it as a visceral experience. In his own words, he did not describe it as a thought. He described it as a visceral experience. In other words, he felt it in his body. And what he felt in his body and his being was that he was connected to everything that was out there. He was like this. He said, basically what he said again in his own words, we are just stardust and we're all connected. Now, when he came back and he talked to some of the academics at Rice University in Texas and told them what had happened to him, they told him that in the yogic framework, he'd had what is called a Sankalpa Samadhi, or an awakening moment, a moment of awakening where there was a profound shift in his way of being as a result of what he experienced. And I use that as an example because that's kind of what can happen for us when we embrace transformation through our body, when we're willing to drop in to a deep level of present-centered embodied awareness, then the possibility is there for us to experience ourselves, not just to see, but to experience ourselves through a different lens. In other words, there's a thing that I like to call a lens of experience. And the lens of experience is an embodied, felt, visceral sense of self in relationship to everything else. And when we get that pure hit of immediate, direct, present-centered experience as it is, we're going to access things and we're going to see things and we're going to experience things differently. To take that even into the trauma world, someone might be terrified of a particular body sensation because in the past it's kind of triggered a memory of some previous event that was, horrendous and not great. Now, if that person can then come into their body openly and with the willingness to be present, and it can be and can feel it's safe enough to do so. And that's a big job in our work, is to help people feel safe enough to engage their body, and they're able to engage the body and come to that place of sensation and have a completely different experience, where in being present and witness to that experience rather than reacting to it, if they can embrace the experience, if they can lean into it rather than run away from it, then it is a completely different thing that begins to happen. What happens then is there's a growing level of trust. There's an awareness that whatever this thing is that is occurring in their body doesn't spin them off into a reaction, and it doesn't have the power over them that it used to have. And so there's actually a transformation that happens there. So there's a new way of being that happens because of this visceral experience. So that's an important concept in our work. And of course, there's many ways we can engage this process on a daily basis through our own practice. So the second Yoga Sutra, after now the disciplines of yoga, the second one is yoga is the cessation of the modifications or fluctuations of the mind. That's pretty clear to Patanjali what yoga is all about. Uh, it's not whether you can do 55 different asana in, all the variations. That's not yoga. It's not whether you can walk around in this flowing robe with a sweet smile on your face. That's not yoga. It's really, yoga is a cessation of the modifications and fluctuations of the mind. So what's underlying transformation? It's not a linear experience. In other words, all of us, and I'm sure you have probably noticed this in your own life, you can have some awakening, some awareness that takes you in a new direction in life, but it's not all over Red Rover as soon as it happens. It may take some time to settle in. And for some people it can be quick, from some it can be slow, but there's no timetable for it. It's a process. It's a process rather than an event. Present moment awareness is about what's happening now, and that's a great place to start. So present moment awareness in any form, but I would suggest that visceral awareness as well as cognitive awareness is important. We can transform purely through cognitive awareness. It is possible. There's many therapies that are based on that. Cognitive behavior therapies based on that principle, that we can transform through cognitive awareness. And that our beliefs shape our behavior. So if we can change our beliefs, if someone can talk us into changing our beliefs and shift our frame of reference, then maybe we can transform. But I think even therapists agree that if the body's involved, it can be much more powerful. And I would certainly say so. I think the body can be a shortcut to awareness because it's such a true instrument. So transformation also involves the recognition and the acknowledgement of the essence of what's happening now in the moment. It's really about embracing reality as it is. It's leaning into what is rather than try to escape from it, pretend it doesn't exist, hide from it, react to it. There's a lot of things we can do with reality when we're faced with a tough call. And many of the things we do are escapist or avoidance. And that really doesn't take us anywhere. We have to embrace reality as it is, sometimes as tough as that is. And that's the hard part. And of course, in any therapy that uses this approach, part of the job of the therapist is to support someone being able to embrace that reality and to feel safe enough to do so. And then to be able to access and apply embodied wisdom to respond to what's happening rather than react to it. And then, of course, our experience will often validate that. For example, I know when I walk into the kitchen in the morning and I smile and I greet my fellow housemates, it's going to create a different impact than if I go in there saying, "Who stole my cheese?" or whatever. So there's a choice around that. And once you start to practice that kind of came to me in one morning in my practice. It just became very clear to me that I can make a huge difference to my household environment, depending on the way I be with the people in the house when I wake up in the morning. So I decided to try it on. I did 30 days of practice. I was going to go into the kitchen every morning and I was going to be the way I was going to behave in a way that created what I wanted to create in my house. And I did it for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, I was amazed to find that, yeah, I was living in a different environment and I created it. It's very powerful. A simple thing, but very, very helpful. I noticed there's something in the chat. I'll just take a look. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the supportive comments. I'm pleased that you're enjoying the conversation. Okay, so then that's what's underlying transformation. Let me see if I can get onto the next slide. And we're coming now to the 8 themes of Phoenix Rising, which is really the topic of my talk today. So after I'd been doing this work for about 20 years or so, I noticed that there were recurring themes, particularly with my clients. I'd worked with a lot of people, and I noticed that there were these attributes or themes. I didn't really know what to call them. I chose themes, but it's probably not the most appropriate word. But there are 8 things that kind of go for the ride with the transformational experience, right? And the first one is befriending our body, right? And this one makes sense if we're particularly in the Phoenix Rising method, where we're using the body as the primary vehicle for transformation. It's kind of like if you're going to use your body as a vehicle for changing yourself, for transforming yourself, you better be friendly with it. If you're not friends with it, it's not going to work out too good. It would kind of be like the chef, like trying to cook in the kitchen and hating her pots and pans, or not having a good relationship with the knives or the cutting board or whatever, and she's swearing all the time at these terrible things that she's got to use to make the meal. That's not going to make for a very good meal, right? And so if we're using the body as a vehicle for transformation, we better have a relationship with it. And that's often the first step for a lot of folks in this particular approach to transformation. We've really got to get comfortable in our own body. And the first limbs of yoga are really about that. Asana particularly is a great way to connect with your body and get to know it and be friends with it. Although some of us can punish our body in asana too, and that doesn't really help. So then once we've got this one down, we've actually got this relationship with our body, we can use it as a tool for awareness. And awareness is huge in the transformational process. In fact, we can't really change anything without awareness. And awareness is more than just what we see. It's really, our awareness is our experience of ourself. It's our state of being. It's our habits, it's our beliefs, it's the way we conduct our relationships. I mean, everything that we engage in life, there's an opportunity for awareness, because awareness is really how we're responding in the moment to whatever's happening in our life. That's the lens that we're looking through. And when we start getting into awareness, we're going to start to see things that we don't like. We're going to start to notice stuff about ourselves that we think, oh my God, I'm doing that again. Oh my God, how awful of me to say that to that person, or, I'm such a selfish person. I didn't offer to help that person over there, or whatever. So we're going to know that we're going to notice this stuff, and we're going to have a tendency sometimes to beat ourselves up because we are perfectly imperfect. We're not perfect. We're going to notice things about ourselves that we don't like. So another piece of the process then is acceptance. It doesn't help to go into blame, to go into shame, to go into self-criticism, to go down that rabbit hole. Doesn't help. All it does is stops the process for a while. It just slows the process down and stops it. Now, of course, we can't muster acceptance if it's not there. So there's a real process engaged here in turning awareness, going from awareness to acceptance. Some of the phrases and terms and kinds of things that we talk about in the transformational vocabulary are things like leaning into what is, like letting it be, that famous song of the Beatles, Let It Be. And it doesn't mean surrender. A lot of people think acceptance means surrender or putting up with something that's less than perfect, right? So let's say I find myself in a relationship that isn't working. Right? I'm aware that I'm in a relationship and I'm spending a lot of time being hurt and not being what I was hoping I would get from a relationship, not being loved. All right, so I'm aware of that. Now, acceptance doesn't mean I have to put up with that. All right, acceptance just simply means I'm aware that this is happening, and it's not the way I would like it to be, and I can sit with that. Now, it's also not reaction, right? So sometimes when we're aware of something like that, the next thing is to get angry and to lay all the blame on the person who isn't doing what we're expecting them to do, or how they're not being the way we expected them to be. So we can say, okay, it's all your fault, and we can get into the blame game. That's not probably going to help either, right? So acceptance is not blame, it's not shame, it's not blame of self, it's not blame of others, it's not shame of self, shame of others, and it's not getting into this isn't it awful end game that just keeps rolling around. It's basically saying, okay, this is what's here. How am I going to choose now to be with this? How do I want to be with this? Yeah. And for a short time, the answer to that might be, I just want to be with it. I just want to feel this fully. I just want to become more aware of this. I want to get a sense of what this is really all about. And that's called leaning into the suffering, leaning into the pain, leaning into the discomfort. And we have a beautiful way of doing this in the Phoenix Rising work, where in an asana, we go to a place called the edge, which is that place of not too much, not too little. And we notice the discomfort. And we practice leaning into that discomfort, not creating pain, not creating, something that's going to kick us out, but something where we can just, we can be present to this sensation, this feeling, this whatever it is. And oftentimes it's not just physical sensations, but it's also inner feelings. Because when you start to get into your body and you start to engage your body with a lot of awareness, you'll notice feelings that you didn't notice before. And some of them are pleasant, some of them are unpleasant. And so with the unpleasant ones, can we accept them just as much as we can accept the pleasant ones? And can we lean into all of them? Can we say, okay, here's joy. Let me just lean into that joy. Let me feel that more fully. Or if it's disappointment, let me lean into that disappointment. Let me feel that more fully. Let me be present to that. And by leaning into those things in practicing acceptance, we can actually begin the transformational process. So we have a choice, really. We have a choice around how to be with what is. And then even if we make a choice that doesn't work out, that's always then produces another choice. We can change that. All right. The choice is really how we choose and how we discern. This is the next theme is discernment, which really means wisdom in a way. Discernment and wisdom are very similar. And so the question becomes, well, what's a wise choice? Well, a wise choice is one that basically is very simple. It doesn't create more suffering. In fact, it creates less suffering. It creates also less suffering for self and for others. So if I'm making choices that are creating less suffering for self and others, I'm probably discerning wisely. If I'm making choices that take me further into suffering or take me away from looking at what I need to look at or create more pain for others or pain for myself, then it's probably not a wise choice. And that's something that can be pretty easily and quickly learned. But it does take some courage. It does take clear seeing. That's the other thing. So these themes kind of rotate around each other. Another way of saying clear seeing is basically pure awareness. Now, sometimes our awareness can be clouded because our awareness is coming from habitual ways of seeing things. Right? For example, someone says something to me in an offhanded way, I immediately go into self-deprecation. Oh, they don't like me because I'm not da, and I'm this and I'm that and I'm da 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 da. So our lens of awareness is colored by habitual responses or behavior, whereas all that person might be doing is just making some smart remark, like, oh, nice shirt you got on there, right? A nice shirt you got on there. I might think, oh, they're criticizing my shirt, right? Or they might just mean nice shirt. I don't know. Right? So can I be with things just as they really are rather than through the filters of my mind? And so this thing cycles around, and then can I accept that? And then can I make choices about that? And then can I discern whether that's my response is wise or not? And sooner or later, we start to get into some knowing of what's true for us, our own truth. Our own truth is a pretty great thing to come to terms with. There's another fancy word for this from the yogic and Buddhist vocabulary. It's called your dharma. You know, what's your dharma? What's your path? What path are you meant to walk here in life? What is it that you bring? What are your gifts? And how do you work with those gifts? What are the things where you get stuck? Where do you get stuck along the path? What are the hindrances that get in your way? And know and accept those as well, right? That's part of your truth, right? So part of your truth is all of it. It's basically a self-inventory that's pretty accurate, pretty much on the money. And it may change because as you go through life and as you learn more, new things are going to become true for you, right? I never thought that I would spend pretty much my whole life in the role of a teacher in some form or another. But the more I went into it, the more that became true for me, that this was my gift. And not only is it my gift, but it is also a very fulfilling way to engage life for me. When I'm doing what I'm doing right now and connecting as I'm connecting with others and sharing what I'm sharing, that just feels right. There's something that's just right about that. And so it's part of my truth. I accept that. And then we need to put our truth into action. Once we're aware of what's going on and what's true, how do we engage that? A lot of people can get as far as, yeah, I know what my path is, but like I'm stuck. I can't get there. So again, what we need to do here is bring more awareness to it, more acceptance to it, new choices to it, greater discernment to it, and step into truth in action. And then there's one final, there's one final theme that I don't know why it didn't come on this slide. Oh, yes, down the bottom. Sorry. And that is flow. All right. So what is flow? There's actually a book been written on flow by a guy called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I can say it, but I can't spell it. But I think his first name is Mihaly, and his second name starts with a CZ, I think. And he talks about flow as a kind of a peak experience, and it's where life doesn't have. There still may be bumps on the road of life, but the bumps don't knock you off your bike. All right. So it's a basic way of engaging life with some level of equanimity, and that equanimity means that basically, to use a quote from the Buddha, where the wise one, like a rock, is not moved by praise or blame. Like just as a rock is not moved by the wind, the wise person is not moved by praise or blame. So in other words, no matter what's going on around us, that's just one aspect of flow, but it's a great one because it describes this state of equanimity where we're not taken away from our sense of well-being within ourselves by the external events or other people's actions or things that are going on around us. It's that state of equanimity, that state of trust and knowing in your own, in being in your own self, and connected to everything else. So they're the 8 themes of transformation. We could go into these in a lot more depth, but for now, it's kind of like an overview. They're outlined in my book called Turn Stress into Bliss, which there may be a few copies of that book left. I'm in the process of doing a rewrite of it for republication, and the existing copies are kind of getting hard to find, but I think there may be a download available too. There's a Kindle version of it that is available. Okay, so next slide. So in Phoenix Rising, we use a way of engaging the body to embrace this transformational process and to get into these themes. First one is breath and movement. Basically, and there's an article, by the way, on the 6 phases of the Phoenix Rising method that appeared in Yoga Journal last year. I think it was the fall issue, September issue of
Yep.
Yoga Journal last year. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. September, October.
Thanks. So you could get a copy of that and you'll find out about these themes if it was something you wanted to do in terms of applying it to your own practice. And I do this every day. This is my practice every day. And I've had this practice for probably now for about the last 6-7 years. And for many years before that, it was a variation of this, but it's in the last couple of years that I've been able to pretty much categorize it down into 6 main features. So the first part of it is breathe and move your body. And that can be any old which way you like. The only important things in this phase is to actually get your heart rate up a little and get your respiration rate up a little. You've probably all heard of the polyvagal theory. And this is kind of in line with that. It's like using movement and breath to basically down regulate the central nervous system, open up your window of tolerance a little more by being present to yourself through body and breath. And then we get into playing the edge. And this is the part that I mentioned before, where you go into a yoga posture and you play with it around the edge of the stretch. So it's rather than doing dynamic asana like in vinyasana, this is a more static approach to asana practice, where you take postures where you can find a physical edge and you use the physical edge and breath as a focus point and hang out there for a while. And you hang out with it with like open awareness. So you're not trying to make anything happen. You're not trying to judge anything. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to change anything. You're just engaging asana as a way of being present to what is. And it might be physical sensation. It might be feelings, might be a state of being, whatever's going on there. And all kinds of different phenomena will arise and pass. And then taking that to the next level is what we call dropping in. It's where you can, it's in the yogic 8 limbs, it's pratyahara. It's basically limiting the external distractions, withdrawing from those and moving in with a focus to the main thing that's happening, the main focus of sensation and breath, and going into that sensation and breath. And basically, when you can practice this after a while, you'll notice it creates an altered state of consciousness. It shifts your way of being, just like in the yogis, and they talked about pratyahara. And it actually will drop you in to what's called a state of concentration, the 6th limb of yoga, and also the 7th limb of yoga, dhyana, or meditation. So dropping in will take you almost seamlessly into a more meditative state. And that meditative state is basically a place of self-presence and self-witnessing and self-awareness that is unimpeded by the fluctuations of the mind. So in a sense, that definition of yoga that I gave you right up front is a lot to do with what this is about. It's getting into that state of being where the fluctuations of the mind slow down, if not cease occasionally, and that will give you clear seeing or insight. And so the next phase is actually using that, listening for insight, like what's here? What's the state of being that I'm inhabiting now? And what awareness is here? And this is often where profound transformational awareness can arise. And it may be quite simple, or it may be quite detailed or quite complex. Some of the ones that a lot of people come to is a sense of what their life is all about. I'm really here to be a vehicle for service or love, or I'm really here to let go of the things that are holding me back from engaging life with greater ease. So a lot of very, very cool things can come up when we can get to this state, and we can see clearly, and we can get a sense of ourselves from a different perspective. It's a different lens of experience. And then, of course, what we can do with that is integrate that insight into action in our life. And that's where we go cognitive. So we're the second, third, fourth, and fifth stages are really very visceral and non-cognitive. They're very much in the body. The 6th phase is where we connect the dots between the visceral experience and the cognitive experience. And we say, okay, how do how do we go about putting this into life in some way, in a way that will create less suffering, greater happiness, greater peace, and the kind of life that I'm really here to live in accordance with my dharma, my truth. Okay. So wisdom through the ages, from the Patanjali and the Buddha, all of these things are connected to what I just said. The Yoga Sutras, the 8 limbs of yoga, the 4 noble truths of the Buddha, the Buddha's 8-fold path, the 5 hindrances in Buddhism, and the 7 stages of awakening. They're all things that come up in this process, in this journey, as connected to the 8 themes. Okay, so that's all I want to share by way of talking, but we've got some time left, and I'd like to offer you the time to ask questions, to share anything that you might have taken from this. I could also lead a short practice if you wanted to do that. So
Yeah,
over to
if I
you.
could just share something really quick. Maybe not quick, but one of the things that I just love about the Phoenix Rising method is we don't use pose names, we don't use these labels, and so it's such like an open, and like Michael uses this word a lot, embodied. It's such a personal experience, you know. So I could lead a class with 10 people, and everybody could look completely different, and so
Yeah.
it's a because we're teaching those themes of acceptance and awareness, you're in a space where you can completely be yourself. And I think that right there is such a powerful tool for transformation of, you know, I'm not comparing myself to somebody next to me and what
Right,
their body
right,
can do.
right.
And I
Yeah.
think, you know, for me, that was one of the things that made this work resonate with me so much. So
Thanks for that, Shae. Yeah, that's a very important point. Yeah, there's an aspect of psychology that we plug into too, and one of the people we're really big into is Carl Rogers, who had this beautiful term of being present to other people, a way of being present to other people that he called unconditional positive regard. And that's a part and parcel of our Phoenix Rising method too, where we treat other people with unconditional positive regard. In other words, we're all on this journey together. We're all at different stages in our life. We're perfect. We're all perfectly imperfect. And so if we're going to be with someone and support them on their journey, it's kind of like we're taking someone's hand and helping them across a bridge. And if you're going to be a helper like that, helping someone across the bridge, you know, if they walk a little bit slower than someone else, then you're going to walk a little bit slower. If they need a little help along the way, you're going to give them a little help. You know, if they need to have their hand squeezed a certain way because that makes them feel more comfortable, then that's what you do. So it's just this way of being present to others that supports them wherever they're at. Without any need for them. Oh, you got to walk straighter. You got to stand up. You know, no, it doesn't matter. Walk the way you walk, and I'll help you along.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I do think that is
Yeah.
one of the biggest pieces of Phoenix Rising that is so unique and has such a huge opportunity to touch people in ways, you know, that maybe they haven't before. You know, whether it was as a child with parents or, you know, like you say, you know, we all have these different human experiences, and just that muscle of acceptance
Muscle of
of
acceptance.
being who I am. You know, I
Yeah,
think we're constantly striving to do better, be more, lose
yeah.
weight, you know, whatever it is, you know, versus here's an opportunity to be authentically you right now in this moment.
Here I am.
I
Yeah,
don't even want you to change. You know, so, you know, I think I got this from you when I'm leading classes. It's like, maybe you have insight, maybe you don't. Your experience is exactly right for you. Just embrace that.
embrace what's here. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's always something here.
Yeah.
Just whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions from you guys on Zoom here or on Facebook? I guess. Yeah.
No, I'm actually very, very interested in the process that you're talking about, Michael. I often have clients that are all up in their head,
Yeah.
and I tell them we've got to get you into your body. Your
Yeah.
body knows the truth. Your head's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, right? Right? You've got to listen to your truth, right? And it really, for some people, is quite a struggle,
Yeah.
right?
So the best way is experience. Give them an experience where they seamlessly leave their head and get into their body. Because telling someone get into your body and out of your head if you,
No.
they got to process that with their head, and
Right, exactly,
and
exactly.
it doesn't compute, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So send them to you, right?
Experience.
Actually, to Shae. Send them to Shae. Actually,
Shae.
I think I do have a referral for you.
Yeah. Experience is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And once someone has actually dropped in, Phoenix, a lot of our Phoenix Rising folks don't have much trouble with client retention, because once they guide them in an experience where they actually get dropped into that different state of awareness, they're like, wow, this is like, this is, I mean, I remember once working with a young teenager back probably in the 80s, 90s or something, but it was where, I guess it was very similar to what it is now. A lot of teenagers like to indulge in a little substance here and there. And I did this session with this, I think he was about 16, 17-year-old, and he dropped into this state of present-centered awareness. And when at the end of the session, he says, man, that is better than drugs.
Now, yeah, I can honestly say I've been on like a 4-hour trip doing that kind of stuff. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing. So thank you. This was very enjoyable.
Oh, thanks. I'm pleased you enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you. And we have a if you're interested in, do you mind me sharing a link, Shae? Is that
No,
okay?
not at all. I've been putting some links in the group while you're talking as well.
Okay, so we have a Phoenix Rising Essentials course every month. It's a 2-day. It's actually it's a 16-hour online course. It runs throughout a week, so it's a Saturday, Sunday, and then the following Saturday, and it's 4 hours a time, and it's basically it's the essential elements of the Phoenix Rising method. And it's great for, yoga teachers, yoga therapists who want to be, maybe people interested in becoming a yoga therapist, or mental health practitioners and others in the healing arts who want to find out more about this, about our approach. So there's one every month, and you'll find it on our website, pryt.com, if you're interested.
Yeah, I put
I'm
that
usually.
I took Essentials, I think 3 years ago, and I was like, oh, this will be a nice addition to my yoga teaching. And then I just haven't stopped taking classes in the last 3 years. So I'm finishing up this year with my IIYT. But yeah, it's very applicable. Even just like, I'm thinking of Isis Latham, who's on the call. Like, she has such, this deep ability to like listen, and Sue Ellen, and, this deep ability to listen. And, something like a Phoenix Rising, it just makes you a better listener, like even more, because it's like learning how to listen without even talking. It's just so those nuances, there's so many nuances to Phoenix Rising, and it just can inform so many different areas of your life.
Yeah, well, thanks, Shae.
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Shae, because I sat with a session. She sat with me in a session, and it was nothing like any type of yoga that I've experienced before. And as a transformational life coach and understanding transformation, it was just so obvious to me how we really need to develop these practices of integrating the mind and the body, like working together with, a lot of the tools, that therapists have, that coaches have, and integrating them and working together with yoga practitioners. That's really where magic and healing will happen.
Yeah, I had a session with a woman on Friday who had said that exact thing. Like, I've been going to this therapist for years, and this one session was so effective. But I think it was that somatic piece of getting her into her body and out of her head. And sometimes that cognitive piece is important. Like Michael said, kind of at the end, it's like a little bow on the present, with the insight and the integration. But the somatic piece, I think, is the real meat.
And the mind stuff gets in the way of being able to move forward with some of the body work too, I think. So I think doing it, together is really powerful. Some of those stages, I really loved your stages of transformation and how you talked about that. That was really helpful. I wanted to thank you for that.
Thanks, Sue Ellen. Yeah. If you're interested in the practices too, I've got lots of free guided experiences on YouTube. So I'll just put my YouTube handle in the chat there. If you look up Michael Lee 46 on YouTube, I've got a channel there, and there's a whole lot of free practices. So yeah, you can.
And I am actually starting a group on February 1st.
Oh yeah.
Weeks. We're going to go through a theme each week. So if you have interest, I'll share some info.
Make sure you share that, Shae. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Shae, I would send that past client of mine to you for that. So definitely share that information.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's we're here to support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Shae just is completing her group facilitator training, right, Shae? You're in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's learning how to use the Phoenix Rising method in 8-week yoga therapy groups. So you run a group for 8 weeks, and each one of the weeks is based on those themes that I just mentioned. So you get to focus on a theme a week for 8 weeks and get to do the practices that go with the theme. And also look at your life in the week in between as well in relation to the theme and the practices. So it's a great course. So she'll be leading that soon, and it's going to be all online because we can't do it any other way right now. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions?
Oh, I think Flossie might have a question.
Flossie?
I don't have a question, but I just am very, very pleased that Shae shouted out about this and that I get to see all of you. I'm here with my husband and my grandchildren, and it's been noisy at times and I've had to get snacks, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thank you, Michael Lee. Shae has spoke of you so many times and so highly, and now I get to see you. And I think as I'm getting older, one of the things I'm learning is patience with everything. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes not so well.
Well, it looks like you're doing pretty well with it right now, Flossie.
Yeah, patience and love.
You got it going on there. I can tell. I can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
All. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Shae too for the invitation to be here and to connect with you guys, and really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of it. And I hope you get a lot out of the rest of the presentations. And it's a great thing you're doing, Shae, bringing different people together and, showcasing some of the people that you've been, involved in your learning and your growth, which I think is just a wonderful thing to do. So.
Thank you. Well, I just want to honor you and your time and offering this wisdom to us, and just really means a lot. I'm so thankful for you.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. And